Now this is a comparison I'm sure that a lot of you have been waiting for. Which one of these value flagships is actually value for money? The Realme GT7 Pro or the iQOO 13? Let's find out in this detailed comparison that we've done for you. Of course, quite a few of you already know the answer to this one, but still, let's find out the differences and get into the nitty-gritties. If you're watching me for the first time, I'm Ershad. You're watching Trakin English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Now let's get the performance testing results out of the way because I've already spoken about it a million times already, and I think even Antutu inside these phones is slightly overworked now. Anyway, the point here to note is that the Realme GT7 Pro did score higher than the iQOO 13 in raw benchmarks, which is basically Antutu, and in Geekbench. But the iQOO 13 was pretty close, especially in Antutu. Now where the iQOO 13 beats the Realme GT7 Pro is definitely in CPU stability, where we got better stability scores compared to the GT7 Pro. However, despite having LPDDR5X Ultra RAM type and UFS 4.1 storage, we actually expected the read-write speeds to be better than the GT7 Pro, but that's not really the case. Realme scoring higher. But where the iQOO 13 once again takes a lead is definitely in sustained performance, especially in gaming. So we ran 3D Mark Wildlife stress test once again, fresh we ran it, and we noticed that the GPU stability was better on the iQOO 13. It also lost far less battery life and it didn't get as hot either. This reached 43 degrees, whereas the GT7 Pro reached 47 degrees. And it genuinely felt hot after that test. Even in the Solar Bay ray tracing test, the iQOO 13 score was higher. It got higher FPS compared to the GT7 Pro. But most importantly, in real world testing, where we play Genshin Impact at highest graphics and 60 frames per second, well, the iQOO 13 definitely has better average FPS compared to the Realme GT7 Pro, and it doesn't get as hot as the GT7 Pro either. There are a couple of gaming specific features that you get with both these phones. You get game super resolution kind of things, where you can actually scale up the game's resolution artificially to 1.5K on the GT7 Pro and 2K on the iQOO 13. But more importantly, you also get game frame interpolation, where certain games will run at 120 FPS even if they don't support it. For example, Genshin Impact on the GT7 Pro, and on the iQOO 13 it'll run at 144 FPS. Regardless, when you look at the Snapdragon 8 Elite tuning, I think iQOO 13 does it better than the Realme GT7 Pro. That's for sure, primarily because it doesn't get as hot and it actually runs stable compared to the GT7 Pro. But quick disclaimer, Realme has issued multiple updates to improve the performance. It was fared worse before, now it's better. Now, the display on both these phones are actually pretty good. It's the new micro quad curved AMOLED panel, which is like a good balance between a curved display and a flat display. As for the display protection, you get short sensation armor on the iQOO 13 and you get Gorilla Glass 7i on the Realme GT7 Pro. Now, when you look at the specs, iQOO 13 definitely has a slight bit of advantage, primarily because one, you get a larger display. Secondly, you also get a higher refresh rate, especially when you're gaming. You get 144Hz as opposed to 120Hz on the GT7 Pro. But more importantly, you also get a higher resolution display. You get a 2K display as opposed to 1.5K on the GT7 Pro. Since both are LTPO panels, you can dial down to 1Hz, and we noticed in our regular testing that it actually does go down to 1Hz, and both are tuned equally well. And both also come with an ultrasonic in-display fingerprint scanner, the position of which is fine, and the unlocking is also really fast on both. But one area where I expected Realme to beat the iQOO is in, the haptic feedback because of OHaptics, but that's not really the case. iQOO 13's haptic feedback has been improved by leaps and bounds, so much so that it is one of my favorite vibration motors inside a phone in 2024. Now, when you're watching HDR content within a 1% window, both of these displays can get extremely bright, which is a very limited scenario, of course. Now, the Realme can go up to 6500 nits of peak brightness, where iQOO can do 4500 nits. And HDR video playback is supported on YouTube and Netflix on both the phones, and both do look really good. But I noticed that iQOO's color accuracy was slightly better than the GT7 Pro. Now, in regular usage, the peak brightness in HDR mode is not something that's important. The high brightness mode is what's important. And in that scenario, there's a slight bit of advantage with the GT7 Pro, where it can touch 2000 nits as opposed to 1800 nits on the iQOO 13. But when we took it outdoors under direct sunlight, both are equally bright, and they're almost equally matched in terms of performance as well, especially when it comes to brightness. Now, since we're talking about the experience of watching content on both these phones, and you're watching our content right now, I'd like to suggest something. Don't just watch our content. If you like it, also hit that subscribe button. Now, of course, both these phones have stereo speakers, but when we tested them out, we noticed that iQOO was slightly richer sounding compared to Realme, but it's not too much of a difference. In fact, why don't you take a listen to it and let me know what you guys think. Now, if you have a pair of truly wireless earbuds that either supports LDAC or LHDC, both of the Bluetooth Iris codecs are supported on the GT7 Pro, but iQOO only supports LDAC and not LHDC. With respect to 5G, we tested it out. Both are actually fine, but Realme is slightly slower in 5G performance compared to iQOO. We noticed that the antennas are slightly better. Although call quality through the earpiece, both are equally good, no problem there. And you also do get support for Bluetooth 5.4, Wi-Fi 7, NFC, all of that is there on both. Oh yeah, by the way, both these phones also do come with an IR blaster and it's inside the camera module. Now, with respect to design, of course, which one you like will be very subjective, but I have a little bit of a soft spot for the iQOO 13 because it looks a little more premium. Now, the GT7 Pro also does look very good, but iQOO also has this monster halo light, which gives it a little bit of character. Of course, both are glass back, metal sides, all of that is there, but most importantly, both also do support IP68 rating and IP69 rating, which is a welcome trend, if you ask me. Now, I also noticed in our testing is that the iQOO 13 felt a little more easier to hold in the hand despite being the larger phone, primarily because it's slimmer and lighter than the Realme GT7 Pro. Therefore, when it comes to design and display, I think that the iQOO 13 definitely has an edge over the Realme GT7 Pro. Alright, now let's talk about the cameras, and I'm not going into the detail of the specs. You can see the camera specs on your screen, and I will talk about what we noticed when we were shooting with these phones. Now, I'll get a couple of things out of the way. The ultra-wide angle camera is higher resolution on the iQOO 13, therefore the kind of pictures that we were getting it, whether it was in daylight or in low light, is better than the GT7 Pro. Secondly, you also get 4K 60fps video recording capability with the selfie camera and the ultra-wide on the iQOO 13. This gives the iQOO an immediate advantage over Realme thanks to the better footage quality. Alright, now talking about the primary camera, the iQOO 13's IMX921 is a physically smaller sensor compared to the GT7 Pro's IMX882. So technically, Realme should capture more details and sharper textures. Well, unfortunately, the algorithm lets the GT7 Pro down. The images are over-sharpened in comparison to the iQOO 13, which has more natural details. Now, in color reproduction, iQOO's natural color mode keeps things closer to neutral but messes up the reds here, which even the GT7 Pro does. In fact, the GT7 Pro's image is punchier and more social media ready, that's for sure. Both are a good look, but iQOO has an advantage with the 3 color tuning options that you get. So I'd say that with respect to color tuning or color accuracy, iQOO's better. With skin tones, if Realme doesn't mess it up, they're more pleasing and warmer on Realme and closer to neutral compared to the iQOO's reddish hue. I'd mentioned this in my previous video as well, that the iQOO has a little bit of a red tint problem, which the GT7 Pro doesn't, especially when it gets it right. So I'd pick the GT7 Pro here. HDR tuning on the iQOO 13 is better than the Realme GT7 Pro. It has excellent control over highlights and shadows. The GT7 Pro is very inconsistent when it comes to the HDR tuning. It blows out the highlights in landscape shots, and with human subjects, it adds a bloom around the face, which definitely looks unnatural. iQOO does it better. Now, when it comes to portrait mode, we actually tested out the 50mm and 100mm on the iQOO 13, and with the Realme GT7 Pro, we shot at 49mm and 73mm. It's not equally matched, but at least with the 2x, we can see that there's a bit of a match. And in the 2x shots, the edge detection is fantastic on the GT7 Pro. It's actually better than the iQOO 13. But the bokeh blur on the rear looks artificial and fake. Take a look at the tree for proof. Now, when we move on to the 3x with the GT7 Pro and the 4x or the 100mm with the iQOO 13, I think that the 3x portrait on the GT7 Pro is just more natural looking and it looks a little bit more DSLR-like. The 100mm portrait on the iQOO 13 is not bad, but the GT7 Pro's 3x portraits are better. Now, when it comes to zoom, at 2x, the iQOO 13 takes a clear win because it's got optical zoom. But once you start zooming further, you will realize that the GT7 Pro is a clear winner. So from 3x to 6x to further, GT7 Pro does it better than the iQOO 13. In low light with the primary camera, the iQOO 13 takes a win. The 100% crop has slightly better details when compared to the GT7 Pro. Now, with respect to the different shooting modes that kind of stand out is the humanistic street photography mode on the iQOO 13 and the underwater photography mode on the GT7 Pro. I will tell you something, you will use iQOO's humanistic street photography mode more than you will use the underwater mode on the GT7 Pro, that's for sure. Selfies on the iQOO 13 are better as well in both daylight and low light. You get better skin tones and no artificial sharpening when compared to the GT7 Pro. Alright, now finally talking about videos, you can shoot 4K 60fps from the primary sensor, but Realme has a higher bitrate capture, so it pulls in more details. Stabilization on the other hand is better on the iQOO 13, so is the sound recording.
Let me know how's the video quality, let me know how's the video stabilization. I think both the phones are performing great. Let me know how's the video quality, let me know how's the video stabilization. I think both the phones are performing great.
In low light, iQOO's low light video recording algorithm is slightly better. You can see the difference for yourself. Now with telephoto, of course, the Realme GT7 Pro's 3x will definitely give you a close-up punch-in, which is nice compared to the 2x. And the telephoto video quality in general also looks slightly better on the Realme GT7 Pro. But overall, what I noticed is that, I wouldn't use either of these two telephoto cameras to actually shoot videos. All that said, if I had to pick one phone for photography, it would be the iQOO 13. Alright, now let's talk about the batteries inside both these phones, right? GT7 Pro, of course, there's a little bit of controversy around it. Again, this unit is the Chinese unit which has the 6500 mAh battery, but the Indian variant comes with 5800 mAh battery. Whereas iQOO also does not come with a 6150 mAh battery like in the Chinese variant. It comes with a 6000 mAh battery in the global variant. But at least iQOO sent us over the Indian variant, so we could test that out. In fact, we tested out both. And what we noticed is that in regular usage, both are rather similar in terms of battery performance. You can easily expect about a day and a half from these phones. And with respect to screen on time, the Realme GT7 Pro gave us about 8.5 hours of screen on time as opposed to 8 hours on the iQOO 13. But that's also because it's got a slightly larger battery, at least in the one that we are testing. So I think both are equally matched there. Also where both are equally matched is in the charging speeds, because both come with a 120 watt charger inside the box and it takes about 30-31 minutes to fully charge. Actually, Realme takes slightly longer, but that's for the larger battery. For the smaller battery, it will be equal speeds as the iQOO 13. However, one thing I must definitely mention is the fact that the Type-C port at the bottom on the iQOO 13, at least, it's a proper USB Gen 3.2 port, whereas on the GT7 Pro, it's USB 2.0. It's time we abolish USB 2.0 on phones that cost over 30,000 rupees. Brands, please take note of that fact. Thank you, iQOO, for fixing that in the iQOO 13 compared to the iQOO 12. Alright, finally, let's talk about the software experience. Now, this is something that is going to be polarizing for a lot of folks. But one thing that iQOO's gotten right is the fact that you actually get, longer software support, basically 4 plus 5 years of software updates, as opposed to 3 plus 4 on the Realme GT7 Pro. Realme should have at least given 4 years of updates. What do you guys think? Having said that, both these phones do not have too many bloatware apps pre-installed, which is nice, but I genuinely preferred Realme's UI experience over FunTouch OS, primarily because it's got smoother animations, it's got more AI features. A lot of it is something that is in tune with what I prefer. Also, it feels a little more modern compared to FunTouch OS 15. The same wouldn't have been true if iQOO had Origin OS in it, but that's not really the case. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick Realme UI 6 over FunTouch OS 15, but FunTouch OS 15 is also becoming better, especially with respect to features. Some of them are really, really useful. Alright, so now after comparing these two, it's evident that the iQOO 13 seems like the better buy. And not just because the iQOO 13 has quite a few advantages over the Realme GT7 Pro, especially when we were testing it, but also because the iQOO 13 is actually more affordable. So yeah, between these two phones, pick this one. Now, if you would pick the Realme GT7 Pro over the iQOO 13, I'd love to know your contrarian thoughts and why you think so in the comments. If it's because of the software experience, I'd understand that. Alright, that's it from me for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.